Nestled among the pine trees and rolling hills of South Lake Tahoe, this quiet community was the perfect place to raise a family. Here, life felt safe, secure, a picturesque retreat from the chaos of the outside world. But on one fateful morning, the peace of this small town would be shattered forever. Jaycee Dugard was a bright and imaginative 11-year-old with a love for animals and a talent for drawing. That morning, like so many others, she walked the short path to her school bus stop, dreaming of the day ahead. But fate had other plans. As Jaycee strolled along the road, a vehicle approached, its presence unremarkable at first glance, yet harboring unimaginable danger within. Inside the van were Phillip and Nancy Garrido, a couple with dark, twisted intentions. Phillip, a convicted sex offender, had spent years plotting his next move, and on this day he found his target. What happened next unfolded in a matter of seconds. Nancy Garrido lured Jaycee closer, her friendly demeanor masking the sinister plan. As Jaycee approached, Phillip struck, using a stun gun to incapacitate her. From a distance, Jaycee's stepfather, Carl Probin, witnessed the horror unfold. He chased the van desperately, pedaling with every ounce of strength he had, but it was too late. The van disappeared, taking Jaycee with it. In the blink of an eye, Jaycee Dugard was gone. What should have been a normal day became the beginning of an unthinkable nightmare. And for her family, the search for Jaycee had just begun. In the moments after Jaycee was taken, her stepfather, Carl Probin, sprang into action. Fueled by fear and adrenaline, he pedaled furiously, chasing the van that had just stolen his stepdaughter. But no matter how fast he went, the van was faster. Within minutes, it vanished, leaving Carl with nothing but a sinking sense of helplessness. Carl's desperate pursuit ended, but the nightmare was just beginning for Jaycee's family. Within hours, the police arrived, and the search for Jaycee Dugard began. News of the abduction spread like wildfire through South Lake Tahoe. The tight-knit community came together, determined to find Jaycee and bring her home. Flyers bearing Jaycee's photograph flooded the streets. Her bright smile stared back at those who feared the worst. Helicopters scanned the area while search parties scoured the woods for any trace of the missing 11-year-old. Her mother, Terry Probin, made an emotional plea on live television, begging for her daughter's safe return. But as days turned into weeks, hope began to waver. Despite the community's efforts, the trail went cold. Witnesses reported seeing a gray van, but the details were vague. With no license plate and no clear direction, law enforcement found themselves at a standstill. The search for Jaycee hit dead ends at every turn. Days turned into months, and the once vivid hope of finding her began to dim. But for Jaycee's family, giving up was never an option. They clung to hope, refusing to let her memory fade, even as the world seemed to move on. While the search for Jaycee grew quiet, her family's anguish grew louder. They were trapped in the agony of the unknown, a family torn apart but not yet broken. Hidden from the world in a suburban backyard in Antioch, California, Phillip and Nancy Garrido created a prison that no one would see, a fortress of secrets where unimaginable horrors took place. Phillip Garrido was a man with a dark and dangerous past, a convicted sex offender with a history of violence and a mind consumed by delusions. He believed he was chosen by God to fulfill a twisted destiny. By his side was Nancy Garrido, a woman who willingly became his accomplice. Together they orchestrated a nightmare that would steal 18 years of Jaycee Dugard's life. In the first days of her captivity, Jaycee was plunged into a world of terror and confusion. Locked in a tiny shed, she was stripped of everything she knew: her freedom, her family, even her own name. Phillip controlled every aspect of her life, using manipulation and fear to break her spirit. He forbade her from saying her name, referring to her only as Alyssa. Isolated from the world, Jaycee clung to the smallest fragments of hope, a survival instinct that would sustain her through years of unimaginable suffering. Over the course of 18 years, Jaycee endured relentless abuse. She became the victim of Phillip's warped fantasies and bore 2 daughters while still a captive. Despite the horrors, Jaycee found a reason to survive: her daughters. She dedicated herself to shielding them from the worst of Phillip's madness, creating a small semblance of normalcy in a life far from it. Phillip's erratic behavior grew more unpredictable over the years, but he allowed Jaycee and her daughters moments outside in the backyard, a world bordered by fences and silence. In the darkest of circumstances, Jaycee's resilience shone through. She taught her daughters to read and write, nurturing their minds even as they remained physically trapped. For 18 years, Jaycee Dugard lived a life no one could imagine, a life stolen yet never fully extinguished. Her strength and love for her children became the light that kept her going in a world of darkness. Phillip Garrido was not an ordinary man. Behind his unassuming appearance lay a history of darkness, a past filled with violence, control, and manipulation. Born in 1951, Garrido's life was marked by disturbing behavior from an early age. In 1976, Garrido was convicted of kidnapping and raping a 25-year-old woman. His victim later described the ordeal as a nightmare, a testament to his desire for power over others. Despite being sentenced to 50 years in prison, he served only a fraction of that time. Prison did little to reform him. If anything, it allowed his obsession with control and dominance to fester. By the time he met Nancy Bocanegra, Garrido had perfected his manipulative tactics, drawing her into his twisted world. Phillip's relationship with Nancy was as much about control as his crimes. A quiet and vulnerable woman, she became his perfect accomplice, loyal, unquestioning, and willing to do his bidding. But was Nancy a victim or a willing participant? Some argue that she was manipulated, trapped in her own cycle of abuse. Others see her as an active conspirator, complicit in the years of torment inflicted on Jaycee Dugard. Whatever her motivations, Nancy Garrido played a central role in the crimes, a partnership forged in darkness and sustained by fear. For years, Phillip Garrido hid in plain sight. Despite being a registered sex offender, he lived a life of relative freedom, working odd jobs and even running a printing business from his home. His erratic behavior drew attention, but not enough to prompt action. Neighbors reported hearing strange sounds from his backyard, children's laughter, muffled cries, and the hum of generators running late into the night, but their suspicions went unheeded. Time and again, authorities missed opportunities to uncover the truth. Garrido's charisma and cunning allowed him to deflect suspicion, even as he held Jaycee Dugard captive just steps away. Phillip Garrido was a master manipulator, a man who thrived on power and deception. For nearly 2 decades, he concealed his crimes in the open, proving that the most dangerous predators often wear the most unassuming masks. August 24, 2009, a routine parole meeting in California took a startling turn when Phillip Garrido arrived with 2 young girls. Their presence was unusual, but it was their demeanor that raised alarms. Their odd behavior didn't match Garrido's explanations. He claimed they were his daughters, but something about the story didn't sit right. Parole officers couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Trusting their instincts, the officers decided to dig deeper. Garrido's history as a convicted sex offender only added to their suspicions. They contacted local law enforcement and arranged for a follow-up meeting the next day. When Garrido returned, he brought someone new, a woman he introduced as Alyssa. She seemed nervous, carefully choosing her words, as if walking on eggshells. Garrido's erratic explanations only deepened the mystery. Determined to uncover the truth, officers separated the group and began asking harder questions. For 18 years, Jaycee Dugard had been silenced, forced to live under an assumed identity. But in that moment, something shifted. She summoned the courage to speak. "My name is Jaycee Dugard." Those 4 words unraveled a decades-long mystery. The little girl who had been taken on a quiet morning in 1991 was alive, and her nightmare was finally coming to an end. Jaycee's revelation set off a chain of events that would bring the truth to light. Phillip and Nancy Garrido were arrested, and the nightmare that had spanned nearly 2 decades was finally over. After 18 long years, Jaycee Dugard reclaimed her name and her life. It was the end of a harrowing chapter and the beginning of a journey toward healing. August 27, 2009. After 18 agonizing years, Terry Probyn stood on the brink of a moment she had dreamed of, but feared might never come: a reunion with her daughter, Jaycee Dugard. When their eyes met, the years melted away. A mother and daughter, torn apart by unimaginable tragedy, were finally together again. The reunion was more than just a family coming back together. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and the power of love to endure even the darkest of times. News of Jaycee Dugard's rescue spread like wildfire, capturing the world's attention. Her story of survival in the face of unimaginable horrors sparked outrage, sympathy, and fascination on a global scale. The media descended on Jaycee's family, eager to uncover every detail of her captivity. But behind the headlines was a young woman trying to reclaim her life and protect her daughters from the glare of the spotlight. "I am so thankful to be with my family again. I need time to heal and to reconnect with the world. Please respect our privacy as we begin this new chapter." As the world watched, Phillip and Nancy Garrido faced justice for their unspeakable crimes. Charged with kidnapping, sexual assault, and false imprisonment, they pleaded guilty in an attempt to avoid a prolonged trial. The suffering they inflicted cannot be undone. But today, we can ensure they never harm another soul again. Phillip Garrido, you are sentenced to 431 years to life. Nancy Garrido, 36 years to life. For Jaycee and her family, the sentences brought a measure of justice, but no punishment could erase the scars left by nearly 2 decades of captivity. Jaycee Dugard's story captivated the world not only because of the horrors she endured, but because of the strength she found to survive, to heal, and to reclaim her life. Her resilience serves as a beacon of hope for others living through their own unimaginable trials. Freedom came at a cost. After 18 years of captivity, Jaycee Dugard was thrust into a world that had changed in ways she could hardly comprehend. She was no longer the 11-year-old girl taken from her neighborhood. She was a mother, a survivor, and someone trying to rebuild her life from the ground up. Her journey toward healing was not a straight path. It was a process of learning to trust again, of grappling with the trauma that had shaped her years in captivity, and of rediscovering the simple joys of life that had been stolen from her. Each day brought new challenges, but Jaycee was determined. She found strength in her daughters, in the love of her family, and in the quiet moments of everyday life that many of us take for granted. Jaycee's survival story was not just a testament to her endurance. It became a platform for her to advocate for others. No longer silent, she used her voice to speak out for victims of abduction, exploitation, and trauma. In 2011, she published her memoir, A Stolen Life, offering the world an intimate, raw account of her experiences. Through her words, Jaycee shared the pain, the fear, and the small moments of hope that kept her alive. Her book became a beacon for many who were struggling with their own trauma, and it helped to raise awareness about the long-lasting effects of captivity and abuse. Jaycee Dugard's story was not one of victimhood. It was a story of strength, courage, and the unwavering will to survive. She became a symbol of resilience for survivors everywhere, showing the world that it's possible to rebuild and reclaim life, no matter how broken it may seem. Through her advocacy, Jaycee helped to push for stronger laws protecting victims, better support systems for survivors, and a renewed commitment to finding those who were still missing. Her courage inspired change, sparking conversations about victim rights, mental health, and the long road to recovery. Jaycee Dugard's journey is far from over. Her strength continues to echo around the world, inspiring others to keep going, no matter the obstacles. Her legacy is one of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, light can still break through. As the dust settled after Jaycee Dugard's rescue, a haunting question lingered. What could have been done to save her earlier? For 18 years, she was hidden in plain sight, surrounded by signs that were ignored or dismissed. Phillip Garrido's bizarre behavior, his erratic visits to parole meetings, and his history as a convicted sex offender should have set off alarms. But the system failed Jaycee, repeatedly overlooking the obvious signs. How many times could the red flags have been waved before her captivity was discovered? The question of missed opportunities looms large. Was it complacency, incompetence, or a failure of the system to recognize the severity of the situation? Jaycee's story forced us to ask, how could we have known sooner? Jaycee's case would ultimately become a catalyst for change. Her kidnapping and captivity brought glaring flaws in the criminal justice system into the spotlight, especially regarding the monitoring of parolees and predators. Following Jaycee's rescue, a wave of new policies and laws were put into place aiming to ensure that predators like Garrido would be more closely monitored. Lawmakers scrambled to strengthen parole guidelines and increased resources for law enforcement to track sex offenders more effectively. The tragedy of Jaycee Dugard forced the world to confront the reality that so many others like her were invisible to the system, and change was needed to ensure it would never happen again. But even in the face of these unanswered questions, there is one thing that stands out above all else: Jaycee's unbreakable spirit. For 18 years, she endured unimaginable horrors, yet she never lost hope. She fought for her survival and in doing so became a beacon of resilience for all those who are silenced. Her story is a testament to the human capacity for survival, for hope, and for the strength to rebuild even after the most unimaginable of traumas. Jaycee Dugard, a survivor, a legacy of hope. If you enjoyed this video and want to uncover more true crime mysteries, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another journey into the shadows. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we reveal more untold stories.